All right, chat. I wanted to watch a debate that the Pod Save America guys had on Zohran, just so you can watch me mauled at these dumb fucking centrist scum. If it sucks, we'll watch something else.
I think Mamdani has shown some extraordinary promise on the campaign trail and in conversations on television, on podcasts. That said, those are just words. How is he going to be as an executive of the mayor of New York?
You could probably figure out how he's going to be as an executive by looking at his campaign, you dumb fuck. The best campaign New York City has had in decades, you dumb piece of shit. That's a good signal of his ability to lead and delegate and manage.
New York City? I have no idea.
The center and center-left should chill out a little bit and let the left win and govern in some places. I think we need more of these opportunities for this generation to be not expelled or exiled from Democratic Party politics, but like allowed to govern in some areas, particularly in some of the bluest areas in the country.
Hey everybody, I'm John Lovett.
Pathetic, dickless, cuck fucking leftists. Can we get some real leftists? What a fucking cuck. Shut the fuck up. God damn, you're such a fucking cuck bitch. Oh, let us sleep. Shut up, the whole country.
Today we're going to try something new. There are a lot of big and hard political questions facing us and no one has all the answers, but what we do know for sure is
let us govern in New York City and then you guys will never give us any funding for any projects and we're not able to pursue any kind of social democratic reforms because you're constantly undermining us. Please let us sit out there as sitting ducks while you work with the Republicans to stab us in the back. Shut the fuck up.
The answer to a rising authoritarian right-wing movement is a broad, diverse democratic movement big enough and strong enough to fight back and defeat it. And that means having messy debates where parts of the coalition do not see eye to eye, or times when the parts of the coalition don't see each other as being parts of a coalition at all. And so we want to create a space to have those conversations, bringing together everybody from Mamdani socialists to bulwark conservatives and all the Obama bros, neo-lib shills, and abundance-pilled technocrats in between to kick it off in what will either be our first or only episode. We're going to talk about the debate around Zohran Mamdani's victory in New York, the lessons we should and shouldn't take from it, and how it has touched off a bigger conversation about progressive politics and policy and the way forward for Democrats. To help us make sense of it, we've got Derek Thompson here. He's the co-author of Abundance. He's the co-author Gavin Newsom did not mention by name when signing this housing bill in California. He mentioned Ezra. Ezra's name's in lights. Derek's just in the back cooking, making pies, getting everything ready. And we're also joined by Waleed Jaheed, director of The Block and former spokesperson for Justice Dems, who's worked to build electoral success for left candidates from AOC to Bernie Sanders. He also wrote a piece in The Nation about how to synthesize some of the ideas in Abundance and some of the ideas of the more populist left. Thank you both for being here. Good to see you.
Thank you, John.
It's great to be here. I've been making so many pies. It's really an honor to be doing anything else right now. So thank you.
I think it's time for Derek to come out of the shadows.
Well, here it is. Your abundance technocratic neo-lib shill. I'm trying to remember all of the very specific adjectives and nouns.
You're not a technocrat. You're not a technocrat. You're a self-described technocrat. You know nothing about actual implementation of policy. You are an airport book level ideologue. You're fucking dumb. Your book is dog shit. And when I cited a specific example of you lying, you went quiet.
I felt really quite identified.
I even put the page number down so you could go look. Fucking loser.
Not any socialist. I need more.
I mean, Pinko comic. I don't know. We originally, one potential name for this show is left. Wait, it's impossible to remember, but I think it's center, left. Left center. Left center, or left center.
Sorry, the name of the podcast I'm appearing on right now is called Center, Left.
No, I'm sorry. I misspoke.
Because I'm about to close this Riverside window in 3 seconds, if that's the ultimate name.
Center, left. It could be left, center. I'm sorry, we've dragged this on long enough, and Waleed's a busy man. All right, so...
what exactly do you find so attractive about the status quo that you think is so fucking good for the average American, or median American, or even top 10%? Like, what the fuck are you guys center for? Specifically, what policy do you think is killing it right now? Like, it's actually just delusional drivel. They don't even justify. They just go, the status quo is self-justifying, and I like it. That's it.
First, I want to start by talking about the Mamdani win itself. There was something I thought was interesting about Mamdani, what his skill as a kind of communicator allowed him to do. And I think it was do something that the left has been begging the more mainstream Democrats to do for a long time, which is stake out some big and bold, clear positions that break through. Because you, from the left, you believe in them in terms of the policy, but on a pure kind of mercenary political calculus, that when you stake out a position like freeze the rent or free buses, it may have some blowback. There may be some political controversy around it, but it sends a signal to a group of people that care the most about that issue and brings them on board in a deeper way. And so that someone like Mamdani may pay a price as being viewed as too far left in some broader sense, but he's slowly building credibility deeply, whereas a more mainstream Democrat would take a set of popular views across a broad swath of issues that are kind of less dynamic, less interesting, and not build that same level of connection. I'm just wondering what your reaction is to that.
Yeah, I think since basically the Bernie Sanders campaign of 2016, I think a lot of the progressive left has had much more of a monopoly on the ideas debate and policy debate than kind of more moderate mainstream Democrats.
The mainstream Democrats have no fucking ideas at all, and they don't even they think having ideas is childish because it blocks you from getting donor money. Well, if you have a policy on public option, then you're not going to get money from the health insurance companies, and that's bad for your campaign. Oh, you're having a policy on education? Well, you're not going to get money from the banks. Oh, you have a policy for public housing? Well, you're not going to get money from the landlords and the developers. They think you're a dope if you have a policy on anything. That's why they try to ape radicalism by talking about things like abortion or trans rights. They'll talk about that because there's donors there. The Christian donors are already all in for the Republicans, so you can ape like you're a radical by saying you believe in abortion and trans rights, and then when it comes to actual ideas, you run away from them, and that's why the Democratic Party is collapsing, because its working class base doesn't see anything to show up for. That's it. It's not complicated. It's very simple, very easy to understand. And these guys are professional blind sides. Like, their job is to go up there and just be confused about the state of the world. That's why they don't invite people like me. They invite people like this.
Maybe that's starting to change now, but part of the simplicity of things like free college, Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, these kinds of things is that they're simple and easy to remember, just like freezing the rent or public grocery stores or free buses, free childcare. These are obviously socialist, social democratic demands that take things off the market and, have the government step in to provide, to deal with inequality.
And that's right. He's correct. These are left-wing ideas because they're decommodifying very important sectors of the economy. If you say we're going to provide high-quality public childcare, that destroys the private childcare industry and makes it very boutique. The only people that are going to get childcare are the people that really want to spend a lot. If you make it high quality, regular people, middle class people are going to want to just take advantage of it because it means they can spend money on other shit. And it ironically will lead to higher quality childcare for most kids and better working conditions for most childcare workers. So it's a win for kids. It's a win for workers. It's only an L for the richest of the rich. That's what these people on the center left, so-called, are against. They don't want billionaires like Elon Musk. They want him to have $1 trillion, not 200 billion. He's got 400 and something billion dollars right now. They're like, no, Elon needs to have $1 trillion. Your kid can't have childcare. That's their exact fucking plan.
But so many kind of cookie cutter DCCC approved candidates, or even Democratic Party establishment candidates like Andrew Cuomo, kind of almost, it sounds a little bit like ChatGPT generated policy of what is just the center point of the Democratic Party that is going to cause the least amount of friction.
It's not even the center point. No. This is why you're stupid. You're not the center point. They're not the center point of the Democratic Party. They're on the right wing of the Democratic Party. They're in the 10% most right wing of Democrats. If you actually survey Democrats, 70% of them want AOC to be the leader of the party, of all Democrats. If you survey all Democrats and you say, should we do the establishment or AOC and Bernie, 70% say AOC and Bernie. It's not the center point of the party. The center point of the party, voters, is AOC. And there is a significant fraction of people far to her left. That's the actual fucking reality.
Around me that is basically aligned with whoever is in charge of the Democratic Party. In this case, it would be someone like, Biden, Kamala Harris, Schumer,
AOC
Jeffries.
is a moderate millennial. I want you guys to understand that. AOC is a moderate millennial. She's in the center of where the millennial generation is. She's a moderate millennial. Maybe slightly center left for the millennial generation. She's not a left winger. She's only a left winger in the context of fucking boomers and the Democratic Party, not the millennial generation. She's very typical person of her generation as far as policy goes.
And I think that's kind of boring. It's very conflict averse. The goal is to just upset the least amount of people possible and say the least amount possible. So if you go and look at kind of purple state, purple district candidates, often their policy platform, one, it's hard to find what they're for oftentimes, and two, there's a thing where they all kind of look the same. And so even for, one of the things I appreciate about the abundance faction or abundance wing of the party is throwing out some ideas that Democrats from across the political spectrum can actually cling to, rather than just say we are for defending Obamacare, we believe in clean energy, and we want comprehensive immigration reform. Like, we've been saying that for 10, 20 years, and it's a little stale now. It just so happens that Zohran is someone who has a clear ideology, clear values, so it comes much easier and naturally to him in a way that's authentic.
Part of this also is certain critiques just didn't seem to have purchase with the electorate this time, a whole bunch of them. And so I'm just curious if you could just talk a little bit about what efforts to kind of come at Zohran you thought were ineffective, and what that says about the electorate in New York City. And then also just what are ways in which we should not overlearn lessons from a race in New York City, which is obviously very different than a lot of other places we're going to need to win.
It's a primary election. Here's the reality. This is what these motherfuckers are liars. This is their entire point. They're going to be like, oh no, see, the thing to learn from Zohran is to make social media posts and not the policies, which is what brought out all the young people. And we don't have a general election yet. Like, these guys are bored fucking losers. Like, it's all they are.
We want to have power again.
I'm actually mauling
Yeah,
right
on your
now.
second question, so many of my friends who live in other cities are like, why do I go on Twitter and Blue Sky and all it is New York City politics for a month, like every couple of years? Like, aren't there other cities in this country? And the answer is no, there are not other cities in this country.
It turns out there aren't. There is not. Once in a while, if LA catches fire, LA gets to exist. But other than that, no, that's it.
Every once in a while. Once every 10 or 20 years. So for Zohran, I received probably maybe 10 times as much mail and 10 times as much advertisement from Andrew Cuomo and his super PACs, backed by DoorDash, Palantir, Michael Bloomberg, Real Estate Lobby, and most of those the pieces of mail I received or the ads I saw on TV or on YouTube were about number one, Zohran's inexperience; number two, that Zohran was a radical who supported defunding the police; and number three, that Zohran was anti-Semitic or anti-Israel. And on all three of those levels, I don't think Cuomo was able to land the hits very effectively, because one, people wanted something fresh and new, and I think the experience argument, even in a city as complicated and difficult to govern as New York, where you do need managerial experience, the fact that Cuomo was the standard bearer of that experience, I think rendered that argument difficult. Like, it was very clear that he was making an argument for himself. Number two, on defunding the police, Zohran said he didn't support defunding the police, and then had a positive solution to what he wanted to do, which was that after speaking to cops, a lot of cops don't want to be mental health professionals. And, what he meant by defund the police perhaps was better explained through wanting to create a department of public safety to deal with mental health crises. And then three, the vast majority, despite the fact that New York City is the most Jewish city in the country, I think many people were just disgusted by what is happening in Gaza, what both Biden's policy and Trump's policy, and most of the Democratic Party electorate across the country has become much more sympathetic to the plight of Palestinians than to pro-Israel or pro-Netanyahu talking points. I think, again, this is like Cuomo running a playbook from 10 years ago, which is that you could never get, you could see from the debate stage that everyone said they were pledged to go to Israel except for Michael Blake, who said he'd go to Jamaica, and New York, and Mamdani, who said he would stay in New York about which country they would travel to first. I just think that the Democratic electorate has radically shifted on that issue, and because Trump and Republicans attack everyone on the Democratic side as anti-Semitic, even Chuck Schumer, it just doesn't land, which I think is bad for actually combating real anti-Semitism.
Well, yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I also do there's a little bit of throwing spaghetti against the wall, both actually, honestly, against Cuomo too. But there's a little piece of this is well, what does this have to do with being mayor of New York? Right? I think people are smart about that. What is going to Israel? What does position on Gaza have anything to do with governing the MTA and figuring out funding for the buses? Derek, what do you think of some of the ways in which we should avoid overlearning lessons from an electorate that's plus 50 Democrats?
Yeah, I think there's probably no limit to the number of ways that we should not overinterpret this primary victory. I think that there's always a rush in the media to describe political phenomena like Zohran Mamdani. And he really is, I think, phenomenal at not only being a political communicator, showing.
I think one of the things that's really important to understand about these people is that their entire existence is rationalizing doing nothing. That's the purpose of these people. The purpose of these people is to just rationalize doing nothing. And these are extreme ideological shills. And what makes them so contemptible is that they're liars. And they think they're smarter than you, and they think they can manipulate you and manufacture your consent into anything. They think you trust them. And if you do, you will be fooled. They are liars, and they are scum. And they never tell the truth. And that's really this is our enemy. This is the face of your enemy. You should, in your mind, when you see Derek Thompson, imagine a SS officer bejeweled with the fucking swastika. That's who he is. He is the tightest enemy of progress. He would exterminate you if he could.
Showing up in all sorts of different favorable and friendly and unfavorable and unfriendly environments and talking about what he wants to talk about. He's a really, really unique person. And
man, I can't believe DSA just keeps generating all these unique people. I can't believe the left just keeps generating these exceptional politicians.
It's very easy, I think, to take the wrong lesson. So you think about, for example, this idea that slogans are good, right? That it's important to find a way to simplify your message into a slogan.
$50,000 tax credit for small businesses in black majority areas as long as you don't leave within 3 years. Wow, I can't believe that didn't win.
Well, everyone's trying to do that. And everyone's been trying to do that for decades.
Exactly, dumbass. It's the content of the slogan that worked. It's the policies of the slogan that made people turn out. You fucking dumbass.
It really matters what the slogan is and the degree to which the slogan appears to solve people's problems. There's all sorts of slogans that are albatrosses around the necks of Democratic candidates. One of those slogans, we just said, abolish the police and defund the police, were very popular slogans in 2020 that Mamdani
they were slogans among activists. Conservative activists say deport them all and all sorts of shit that's unpopular. It's only you centrist scum that try to go, oh, I hate those people. The left is terrible, depressing left-wing turnout and not winning over any right-wingers. That's why you're a fucking loser. It's what I've been saying for years. In fact, When people were saying all cops are bastards, I would say it's not a slogan that I would use as a politician, but it's a protest slogan which explains something very important and something that people agree with intuitively. It's that the policing system in America is broken in such a way that even good people do bad things. You see how I take the protest slogan and I say I wouldn't say it myself, and then I explain it as, you know, that's what Zohran's doing with, for example, globalized intifada. And what does that mean? It means he's on the side of the protesters. He's just trying to explain it to the non-converted. So they go, you know what? That actually makes sense to me. Instead of doing what you guys do, which is you adopt conservative framing to try to win the Democratic Civil War, thereby destroying youth enthusiasm. That's why you're an albatross around our necks. Much more so than defund the police. And you know what? We need to defund ICE. We need to get that conversation started.
Ran away from in 2025, and his instinct to run away from those slogans, I think, was really important in terms of his bringing along moderate voters in the Democratic primary. What's important about freeze the rent, to me, or free buses, is that these are slogans about affordability, period. And if you ask Democrats who switched the Democratic column to the Republican column in 2024, what are the biggest issues that they care about? According to polling that I saw, the 4 biggest issues were cost of living, the economy, inflation, and housing. In other words, affordability, 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 and affordability. So it's not just his ability to come up with a slogan.
By the way, affordability is a meaningless word which centrist Democrats like to use because it means nothing. And they try to pretend like they agree with you on shit, but they don't. It's a meaningless phrase. It is a buzzword, just like abundance. It is absolutely worthless. And they say it so they can try to expropriate the enthusiasm people have for real shit. Affordability means nothing. Absolutely nothing.
That tells us that what the Democratic Party needs is to stake out more dramatic positions on any given idea. But rather, the lesson I take is that he was unembarrassed about answering the problems that New Yorkers said they had, which is that they felt that their city was no longer affordable, and he had a set of ideas to respond to that. So the lesson I wouldn't take here are big picture lessons about, like, you know, just find a way to come up with a slogan, just find a way to take the policies that work in a Democratic primary in a plus 50 Democratic place and use them to run in, say, -3 Democratic states around the country.
By the way, it will also work there because you'll juice the turn. First of all, right-wingers are right-wingers. Kamala Harris lost ground trying to appeal to them, and her turnout on the left was depressed. There are more left-wingers in America than right-wingers. It's a fucking lie that it's anything different. Even in these so-called -3 districts, that's meaningless. If you turn out our base, if you excite the apolitical, you will crush. For the longest time, these people said, well, it didn't happen in the primary. It didn't happen in the primary. It didn't happen in the primary. How do you expect it to happen in the general? And when we win a fucking landslide in the primary, now suddenly it's like, well, it wouldn't work in the general. And when it works in the general, they're going to say, well, you know, it was New York. Donald Trump got 30% of the vote in New York. Donald Trump made massive gains in New York with exactly the people that Zohran is winning back. So that means that in swing districts and swing states, he would have won. There's a myth of crossover. It's not real. Split ticket voting is at an all-time low. It's not happening. Just stop.
I don't think that makes a lot of sense. What I do think makes sense, though, what does make sense is the idea that voters can smell authenticity. They can smell sincerity. You can say a lot of terrible things about Donald Trump, and God knows that I have. One thing that Donald Trump is incredibly sincere about is the fact that he frigging hates liberal elites. And he has since the 1970s, the 1980s.
Are you guys clear about hating Republican elites, you fucking scum?
Kicked him out or wouldn't let him into the cool Manhattan clubs. They wouldn't let him into the cool Manhattan areas. He despises these people. And folks who hate liberal elites can smell that on him. For all of his strangeness and his bullshit, they can smell that one nugget of authenticity. It's very, very difficult, I think, to lie to people over and over and over again about something that you truly don't believe in. And so if you really do want to solve people's problems, if you do want to solve problems of affordability, ability, right? Abundance has a theory of how to do that. Democratic socialism has a theory of how to do that. But at least there's a clear theory of how to do that, such that I want to go on leftist podcasts and talk about my ideas. And Mamdani wants to go on conservative podcasts and talk about his ideas, because he actually has what he considers a diagnosis and prognosis to the most important problem of our time. That is what's important to me. The ability to be specific and clear about ideas you have to solve the problems that people are actually feeling.
Waleed, Mamdani kind of moved away from defund the police because it was a controversial term. He's faced a lot of blowback around this phrase, globalize the intifada, which he has said he does not use. He does not embrace violence. He denounces violence, but he's sort of unwilling to critique the phrase in a way that has drawn a lot of negative attention. And I'm just curious as to what you think that means, like what you take away from that. What is it meant to say to his supporters? Why does he seem unwilling to kind of give there when on a phrase like, say, defund the police, he's been more willing to kind of move?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really complex...
The answer is, if something is poisoned, it's a collection of words. It's not a policy. Who gives a fuck? You just drop the bad collection of words and you move on to something else that sticks. The Republicans have been doing that for decades. It used to be called the estate tax, and then Republicans started calling it the death tax. They didn't say the estate tax repeal. They said they wanted death tax repeal. If you just change the words you use to more appealing words, that's called doing politics. It doesn't mean the policy is necessarily against what is good. See, this is what these dumb Democratic cucks don't want to talk about, right? Which is, oh, okay, people have been poisoned against the idea of defund the police. Let's change our way of describing it in a way that better explains it so that people can get on board. But because they believe in nothing, they don't want to do that. Because they don't believe in anything. So, oh no, this policy was much described in a way which is bad for the popularity. I guess we have to give up on the policy, no matter if the policy is correct or not. A technocrat, which you are not, Derek Thompson, a technocrat would support a policy that was unpopular if it's a good idea. That's what a technocrat would do. You're not a technocrat. You're a grifter.
Complicated dilemma. I think the reason why he's taken the position he has is because of Donald Trump's crackdown on anti-war, pro-Palestinian activists in universities and communities all across the country who are being picked up for op-eds or things that they've written or, protests they've attended.
I mean, there's a reason why you're saying abundance and not neoliberalism, right? Like, you understand that neoliberalism is unpopular. So you're using a different word called abundance. Now, I oppose neoliberalism, so I'm saying abundance is neoliberalism rebranded, just like Third Way, just like the Blue Dogs. I'm calling you out because I oppose your policies. See that? That's why you're doing the whole abundance thing, because you're trying to reframe a very unpopular set of policies and arguments that people hate. Somehow you can figure that out for neoliberalism, but you're having trouble figuring it out for for forms of public order and policies that work really well in countries like Norway that have 100% clearance rate on their homicides. Meanwhile, half the people who get killed in this country, we never find out who did it. Maybe we should be, as Zohran says, having police focus on serious crimes like murder and rape. And we should have, social workers and mental health professionals focus on public disorder, the homeless, drug addicts, the people that police stand around playing Candy Crush instead of doing their fucking jobs.
Including people like Mahmoud Khalil, including professors and grad students at Columbia and Georgetown and other places around the country that Zohran doesn't want to...
I'm sorry for yelling so much lately, chat, but these people fucking piss me off. They piss me off, and I feel almost like when I'm yelling, I'm getting through to more people. I'm yelling so you understand that what I'm saying is important and that you should pay attention. I wish I could just speak calmly and have these arguments go, but I'm yelling so you understand just how unacceptable the centrist Democrats are and how fucking stupid they are and worthless. A lot of people try this very nice, well, maybe I have a different argument.
add to that sort of crackdown on people's free speech. He's also someone I think who I don't think he's used the term. I don't think he thinks it's a strategic term. His father is the literal professor who's written books about things like when the American media uses scary Arabic terms that mean one thing and for one community and mean something else when it's deployed in a American, or in this case Jewish context. If you go on Wikipedia right now and type in intifada, you'll find probably 10,000 intifadas, most of which have nothing to do with Israel or the Jewish people. But in the context of politics and in communications, when you're explaining, you're losing oftentimes. And so I think this is a complicated thing for him. And I will say that part of the person on the media beating the drum about this is Jonathan Greenblatt from the Anti-Defamation League, who engages in a lot of defamation of Muslims and Arabs and even Jews who are critical of Israel. And so I don't think Jonathan Greenblatt is going to be happy with Zohran at any point in his political career. And so it's just feels like sometimes there'll be one controversy here and then there'll be another one, but it will be something that Zohran has to navigate through his political career in New York. Like I don't know, I don't see a situation where the ADO or Jonathan Greenblatt will ever be happy with Zohran, given Zohran's positions on U.S. policy toward Israel.
No, I know. I feel conflicted about being conflicted about this myself, because I can't stand the way Jonathan Greenblatt has been weaponizing anti-Semitism. I find it disgraceful. He's become like a tool of the Trump administration in being willing to entertain what Trump is doing to crack down.
So in other words, by you entertaining it, you're also a tool of the Trump administration. You don't say.
On Harvard and Columbia and other schools. And so this is sort of, I think, what's interesting is I hear what you're saying, and a place where I think that the kind of pro-Palestinian movement has gained a lot of ground is by saying, hey, we're not going to.
They've gained a lot of ground among regular people. Where they haven't gained ground is among the corrupt Democratic Party elite, like you.
Privilege, feelings about words over what is an ongoing atrocity in Gaza, what is an ongoing systematic abuse, murder, war crimes against an innocent people. Feelings should not be so important. But I don't think the phrase is useful, because I think we need to be building as big a coalition as possible to be against Netanyahu, to be against ethnic cleansing in Gaza. And as someone who wants to see the success of this movement, I don't use the term, and I would encourage other people not to use it, while understanding that we all have to come together to fight back against what Israel's doing in Gaza. And I want to understand why saying that seems like a concession.
Yeah, I think you raise good points. I think we're also in just uncharted territory where I don't think there's ever been someone from the pro-Palestinian movement or a Muslim or an Arab at this level of political power in as Jewish of a demographic as Zohran. And so we're like in the transition period right now where, nobody ever has raised the question about like when Eric Adams or Andrew Cuomo, parade around with 1,000 Israeli flags a year after war crimes, like what if that would make Muslims uncomfortable or Arabs uncomfortable, or is that Islamophobic? And I think what will end up happening because of Zohran's passion and convictions on this issue is that something akin to the More Perfect Union speech of Barack Obama in 2008 in response to the manufactured controversy over Jeremiah Wright's remarks, like if he wants to be mayor of the city, at some point he will need to articulate, I don't know how speeches do in today's information environment, but something along the lines that is able to bring people together, that isn't just a soundbite or a clip. I think Zohran feels really deeply about this stuff. I think Brad feels really deeply about this stuff, and I would hope they would be able to build something that isn't just like a media hit on NBC, but something that's really thoughtful about, this has never been done in American politics, is build this coalition between someone like Brad and someone like Zohran. And so I think it's happening in live time, and I don't see it going anywhere else but some sort of big kind of thing like that articulates his vision on the issue. But he wants to be known as the affordability candidate and the person who's fighting for working class New Yorkers. And I don't imagine that speech will happen in the next few weeks.
Derek, you've talked about there being kind of a connection, a thread from this, I think, often heightened and hyperbolic debate on what is a deeply sensitive issue in in New York to some of the
hyperbolic debate about a genocide going on with American aid, where we spend 70% of the war we pay for. Like, what do you mean hyperbolic debate? We're doing a genocide. We're actively helping the genocide. We're targeting any outside interveners. We bomb the Houthis. We bomb Iran to help Israel do the genocide so there's no humanitarian intervention. What do you mean? What do you mean?
More policy-oriented debates around governing a progressive place like New York, right? When you have to pick a fight with your own side, or when you have to hold the line to prove your kind of bona fides to keep your coalition together, whether it's activists on a college campus or kind of public sector unions. I'm just curious what you think about this.
I think Mamdani has shown some extraordinary promise on the campaign trail and in conversations on television, on podcasts. That said, those are just words. How is he going to be as an executive of the mayor of New York City? I have no idea. And the truth is, I'm not sure that anyone should have like a really, really clear idea of how great of an executive he's going to be, because this is not like a job that he's previously had. I was talking to Nate Silver about this yesterday on a Substack.
He tried to call Cuomo's genocide defense unimportant spaghetti. All right, hold on.
Everyone on the Democratic side is anti-Semitic, even Chuck Schumer. Like, it just doesn't land, which I think is bad for actually combating real anti-Semitism.
Well, yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I also do there's a little bit of throwing spaghetti against the wall, both actually, honestly, against Cuomo too. But there's a little piece of this is like, well, what does this have to do with being mayor of New York?
No, okay. I don't think you're quite characterizing it correctly. That's why I didn't listen. Cuomo should be attacked more because he's literally a fucking sexual harasser, and you fucking scum are pathetic.
Podcast, and the analogy they came up with there
of course,
is like,
and of course you were. But
like maybe tell me if this lands or not. Like in sports scouting, right? In NFL scouting, for example, sometimes there's a quarterback who's drafted in the first round who's played very few games in college. But the promise that they show in those few games is electric. Like the combination of skills that they have is like something that nobody's ever seen. They can throw the football further than anybody that's ever been tested at the combine. They're faster than anybody that's ever been tested at the combine. But how many reps do they actually have under center? Very, very few, right? You should have an enormous amount of uncertainty about what exactly this person is going to be like when they become the leader of an NFL team. And that is fundamentally how I feel about Zohran Mamdani. Like, he has a combination of communicative skills and political instincts that I think seem really quite special. But running New York City is not about choosing the right words in the right moments in front of the right cameras and mics. New York City is an unbelievably complex organism, and he has to put people around him, I think, like Brad, who really understand how to work the bus.
Open presents. Thank you for the 100 gifties. Let's go.
How MTA works, how the interplay between state government and city government works.
He was literally an assemblyman. He knows exactly how it works. This is just, by the way, this is I don't know how to explain this. Gosh. How do I say this? All right. This is what a precocious teenager would sound like. If you're impressed by Derek Thompson, you're impressed by a precocious teenager level. This is like AP government in high school level analysis. I guess it's impressive if you're stupid. It's not actually an adult analysis of politics.
I'm really interested to see who he surrounds himself with on the one hand. On the other hand, I'm interested to see.
Zohran is very clearly a left-wing politician who's interested in effective policy. This is what FDR was like, by the way. FDR said, the number one thing FDR cared about was competence and loyalty to the joint program. And he brought in socialists. In fact, a lot of FDR people thought that they were actually proving reformism correct. They were like, we're on the path of abolishing capitalism slowly. We were going to strangle. I think there's a quote. It's like, strangle capitalists in the crib or something. Hold on. I can't remember the exact quote. It's in books, not easily Googleable. Derek infantilizes Mamdani's experience at the same time he's become famous for writing a dentist waiting room level political science fiction novel about an imagined future where we make pharmaceuticals in outer space. Yeah, he's actually a fucking mental... not very intelligent.
Who he's willing to disappoint. I think running New York City, or really...
You is who he's willing to disappoint.
Any political job. I mean, you saw this maybe in the White House. Politics is harder than campaigning. It requires making trade-offs and disappointing people that you promised certain things when you were campaigning for that job.
Man, it's so odd because Donald Trump doesn't seem to be doing that. Donald Trump seems to be delivering all the most horrible shit he promised with an extremely narrow majority. How is that possible? This is the function of Derek Thompson. The function of Derek Thompson is don't dare to dream. We know we can't. That's his entire function. His entire function is to turn smug liberals into politically inert nerds. Fuck this guy. Honestly, there's a few people that if they just went away, our political discourse would significantly improve. Derek Thompson, Ezra Klein, Matt Iglesias, what's that other fuck? Josh Barrow. Like, these people just need to go away.
And I do think Mamdani is
yeah.
going to have to ultimately disappoint some people, in large part because a lot of his policies are incredibly expensive and they require a body.
We're about to spend $150 billion on ICE, and he's saying $700 million for free buses in the richest city on the planet is, to a quote, incredibly expensive.
Buy-in from state government that might not be forthcoming. They might require taxes that are very, very difficult to raise. I mean, already New York City spends more per capita than any city in the country. New York State spends more per capita than any city or state in the country. I personally would not go into a situation...
And by the way, the reason why that is if I listened to Derek and Zohran's conversation, and Zohran talked about how there's a lot of consulting grifts that they need to obliterate. And Zohran talked about how it's so much easier and cheaper to build in Paris with unionized labor. This is what Zohran said, directly contradicting Thompson, which he did not absorb at all. He said, workers in France are also unionized, and they're also paid well, and they can build shit at a third the cost here. Why is that? Well, the answer is we have an excess of planning, an excess of consultant fees, excess delays that are not due to construction. Or not. And he also talks about how privatized utilities will often load up costs for upgrades of utilities onto public projects in order to take them off their balance sheets. Zohran specifically talked about how it's actually a lot of private grift, and he was very specific. Very specific. In fact, can someone find it for me? Can someone find it for me? Because I don't want to scrub through it. But if there is a chatter out there who will find the Derek Thompson, Zohran Mamdani conversation where Zohran talks specifically about why things are so much more expensive in New York, I would love it. Because it shows you that he's a dishonest fucking fraud. He is a fucking fraud. The reason why I hate these people is because they're liars. I like people that are honest. If you disagree with me and you're honest about what you support and what you value, I will like you. I will disagree with you, but I will like you. These fucking scum are liars. It was Derek.
Like this, thinking that what ails New York is an insufficient amount of money being spent. I think it's more about the way the money...
That's not what he says. That is actually not what he says. He's such a fucking liar. In some cases, it is insufficient money. But in many other cases, the money's being diverted to, say, cops. Okay, you didn't really find it for me. But I'm curious to know what you would do to bring down costs for the most expensive subway construction project in the world. It sounds good to say that in the early stages of the 2nd Avenue subway, we were paying a lot to consultants and outsiders. But I'm also convinced that public sector unions... Oh, here we go. Here's a conversation. If Democrats are going to ask voters to give us power to add new government functions, we have to prove that government can function in the first place. Exactly. I think what's been frustrating is that we've allowed the language around bureaucracy, efficiency, and waste to be seen if it's a right-wing concern. It is the most paramount left-wing concern because it is either the fulfillment or the betrayal of which motivates so much of our politics. My chief opponent is Andrew Cuomo, someone whose supposed strength of managerial competence stands in sharp contrast to his actual record. The MTA is a chief example. He was so eager to chase the headlines of saving money that he implemented a restructuring program that eliminated positions as soon as someone retired without any actual comprehensive plan for ensuring that we were retaining their capacity. That left us in a situation like the 2nd Avenue subway, where in the first phase we spent more on consultants than on construction because we've so lost so much of that internal capacity. We need to replace the people who fired or were retired. So he literally takes on this stupid liar's fucking point with direct evidence and specific examples. And did Thompson retain any of it? I'm curious to know what you would do to bring down the... by the way, more on consultants than construction. That's why we suck. That's why moderate Democrats suck, because they're ideologues who don't believe in government. So they hire outside consultants like the McKinsey Group, and they spend billions of dollars on worthless consultants making duplicative reports over and over and over and over and over again. That's the grift that the Democratic Party funds, and that's why it can't do shit. That's why they can't build the high-speed rail in California, because they spend money on infinite consultings and infinite reports and infinite masturbatory bullshit, and it's all scams. It sounds good to say that in the early stages we were paying a lot of money to consultants. He said more money to consultants than on construction. Not a lot of money, more money. But I'm also convinced public sector unions have rules that raise costs far above what they are in other countries. I'm certainly not against public sector unions in the big picture, but when I look at why New York City builds the most expensive subways in the world, while more unionized countries in Europe build much cheaper subways, one answer for me is that the public sector unions in New York City have contract demands that are raising the cost of per mile construction. Are you fucking... like, there's only one word for this, chat. Like, you have to be a complete fucking moron. They're more unionized in Europe, which is why the unions are more expensive in America? You are absolutely fucking R-worded. Like, literally. Yeah, the unions are more powerful over there, which is why they cost more here. What? I will have to work with public sector unions. I think I come to a different conclusion than you. If, for example, we name one of those counterparts, which is Paris, where they have arguably even stronger unions, and yet the cost per mile is so much less, to me, the conclusion then can't be that it is the president of the union's work rules or labor rules in general. To me, the things that really stood out is how we drive down costs is the importance of something known as utility relocation. There's a piece of legislation that I introduced to the state assembly that would require public service corporations like Con Edison, National Grid, Verizon, other telecommunication companies to perform the work that's required to support the MTA's infrastructure improvements on a reasonable schedule and in accordance with actual needs. So often what happens is that when the MTA does any kind of significant construction, these other entities, public service corporations, typically look at this as an opportunity to get gold standard work done for whatever it is they require. And even the city sometimes does this. And what this all leads to is ballooning of the actual cost of the infrastructure because it's being used as this one moment where the city gets a park and Verizon gets better underground cable networking, and it just continues on and on and on. And then the actual price tag is associated solely with the cost of what was supposed to be just the MPA's infrastructure, as opposed to the truth of it, where everyone is using this as a moment where they can finally spend as much money as possible at no cost to themselves. See, this is what an actual intelligent leader or wonk or technocrat looks like. Notice that he's specific. He gives examples. He's talking about a real project. It's not just Pavlovic bullshit. And then Thompson changes the subject. No follow-up, changing the subject. Again, he was told exactly what the problem is. Excessive outside consulting. It was everybody coming to feed at the trough, because they're for-profit corporations that get to spend government money. And Thompson was like, oh, it's unions' faults. He's given a full in-depth example, and then he's silent because he's fucking cucked. This is why he's a dishonest little worm.
He is being spent, right? That requires a level of bureaucratic sophistication and understanding of the city's levers and buttons that I just don't know that he has. I will say this, though, that...
Guys, you heard what I just said. You just listened to their conversation. Does Derek Thompson sound like an honest man to you?
One of the risks, I think...
Can we check on the bill? Something's happening, sure. I'm malding so fucking much right now. You have no idea.